most of the markets we encounter in our everyday lives would fall into the category of monopolistic competition. And this can help us understanding what goes on in a monopolistically competitive market, can help us understand why firms advertise, why we see billboards everywhere when we drive down the highway, why when we turn on our TV every few minutes we have to stop and watch someone tell us about their product, right? Why does this happen? The reason for this is that in monopolistic competition, your only hope of gaining any profit is that you can change the demand for your product, right? And so you'd like to go from this sort of demand curve to this sort of demand curve. Advertising not only shifts your demand outward, but also can make demand for your product more inelastic, meaning your customers are willing to stick around even if you charge higher prices. And so you are able, if you advertise and advertise successfully, you can move from this type of firm to this type of firm where you can charge higher markups than before. So why do firms advertise? They want to increase demand for their product. They may also want to provide information to consumers. And really, it's a form of non-price competition. It allows you to try to compete, try to set yourself apart without having to lower your price to get people to come in the door. Instead, you convince folks that maybe you have a higher quality product or a different product that they really would like to try, right? So it's a form of competition that doesn't involve having to lower your price, and in fact can mean you could, if you do it successfully and you're able to increase or decrease elasticity of demand for your product, you possibly would be able to, in fact, increase your prices. And also, advertising might signal something about quality, which I alluded to in the last point. If you're a firm that cares enough or has the resources to advertise, then maybe you're a higher quality firm. Where do we see advertising? Do firms in perfect competition advertise? So remember, perfectly competitive markets are markets where there are lots and lots of firms, also lots and lots of customers, and everybody's producing an identical product, right? So because everyone's producing an identical product, firms that advertise are going to have higher costs than their rivals. They're going to be paying to advertise without really any gains. So these are markets where maybe we'll see advertising at the industry level. So something like milk. If you're a dairy farmer and your friend down the road is also a dairy farmer, why would you pay the cost to advertise when all it's going to do is make people want more milk, not specifically want more of your milk, right? So you pay the cost to advertise and you bring in customers not only to yourself but to your competitors as well. You don't really get to see the gains from your advertising unless you can sort of band together the Dairy Farmers Association of America and at an industry level you advertise for milk and try to increase demand for milk overall. So that's usually what we would see in perfect competition, is more advertising at the industry level rather than individual firms advertising. In monopolistic competition, however, this is where we can really see some benefits to advertising. Advertising can increase demand for the single firm's product because remember, now your product is differentiated, and advertising can get that message out. It can tell consumers how you are different and why they should want to come to you rather than your competitor, right? Why DiGiorno instead of Pizza Hut, right? Why a Big Mac instead of a Whopper? And you actually will see the gains from advertising because when you advertise the Big Mac, you don't have that risk that folks are going to want to, not as big a risk anyway, that folks are going to just decide, oh, I love this Big Mac ad, I want a burger, and go get a Whopper, right? If you do a good job of advertising your Big Mac, you make people specifically want your burger. They want your Big Mac, and so you pay the cost to advertise. You also see the gains from advertising. Want some pizza? What about a monopolist? Does a monopolist advertise? As you can probably guess, advertising is less likely since their product has no close substitutes, consumer choice is limited. You don't really have to spend a lot of money on advertising because if folks want your product, they've got to come to you, right? There's no option that you're competing with that you have to put out any information to get people to come to you because you're the only guy in town. But you might advertise just to inform consumers about your product and to stimulate demand for your product. If nobody wants your product, then it doesn't matter that you have no competition. You would have no customers, right? So you may see some monopoly advertising just to sort of stimulate demand for that product. But they won't have to be doing anything to differentiate themselves from others because they don't have competition. There's sort of a negative effect in advertising. So the paradox of advertising, which we can discuss more if we talk about game theory, but the paradox of advertising is this. So suppose Domino's advertises, right? All else equal, Domino's sales will increase. It'll be able to recover its costs. Good for them. They've advertised. They've seen the gains from advertising. But in the real world, Domino's doesn't exist in a vacuum, and so when Domino's puts up a billboard and starts seeing an increase in sales, what happens? Pizza Hut's going to respond with their own advertising campaign, and they're going to start seeing an increase in sales. And so maybe Domino's puts up a billboard and steals Pizza Hut's customers, but then Pizza Hut puts up a billboard and steals them right back, and so the net result is sales remain the same. They've sort of canceled each other out. But now everybody has higher costs. They've canceled each other out in terms of revenue, but everybody's now paying to advertise. This is a negative business stealing externality of advertising. And it's kind of this catch-22. You don't want to be the only one who doesn't advertise because then everybody steals your customers, but everybody would be better off if you all could somehow make a pact not to advertise, right? So here's what happens when in these situations. So say this is your long-run average total cost curve before you advertise, right? And you're producing somewhere like at 0.1, right? You decide to advertise, and when you do, it increases your costs, and so you have a higher long-run average total cost curve, but you see a big enough jump in sales from Q1 to Q2 that it makes up for it. So yes, your costs go up, but your quantity sold goes up enough that you move from 0.1 to 0.2. So really your average total costs are coming down because you're selling so much more after advertising. But your competitor starts advertising now, and they steal your customers back, putting you back to 0.3, where you're advertising, so you're on a higher long-run average total cost curve, your costs are higher, and since your competitor's also advertising, you don't see the gains in quantity sold, and so your ultimate position is that you've moved from 0.1 to 0.3. Because everybody's advertising and sort of canceling each other out in terms of quantity gains, right? So that's one of the negative things about advertising is this sort of advertising paradox. Some other negative things about advertising are probably the things that you think about when you think about your negative feelings toward ads, right? One is inspires brand loyalty. That's a good thing for the firm. It causes more inelastic demand. But it can be a bad thing for the consumers because with inelastic demand comes higher prices, though maybe the quantity is not that much better, or the quality, is not that much greater. So the example here is pearls. You can have pearls like this, or you can have pearls like this. Both are pearls, but because of brand loyalty, the ones in the box go for much higher price. And then sort of the stereotype negative of advertising, is it persuasive or informative, right? It's both, but advertising can be manipulative, right? Firms may have an incentive to lie in their ads to try to get you to come over to their brand. And so we have, in the U.S., we have the FTC, which regulates advertising, enforces truth in advertising laws. requires that food and drugs and supplements and things have to have labels that tell you exactly what's in them and in what quantities. Alcohol and tobacco have to give warnings about the negative effects of their products. And so we try to cut down on some of that negative incentive that firms might have to lie or to try to just persuade you rather than really informing you of actual qualities of their product.